What happens at laser tag never stays at laser tag.
Laser Unfocused Tag Talk.
Laser Unfocused Tag Talk.
I feel like you could be like in Ghostbusters or something.
Oh my God, you have got some stories.
Let's talk about laser tag.
Who knew you were a laser tag legend?
Time to get laser unfocused. Tag Talk with Tivia.
Welcome to Laser Unfocused Tag Talk. Hi, I'm Tivia. This may be the only podcast able to connect a lawyer, a lizard, and a laser tag game. But when you're talking about the Photon fiction and the merchandising developed back in 1986, let's just say there are a lot of unique aspects to cover. Today, I'm chatting with Doug X, aka the laser tag lawyer, who's here to discuss the Photon fiction with me. Photon fiction is simply what we're going to use as sort of a shorthand to mean the characters and the stories and the premise for what then became the television show and the books and the action figures and the licensed merchandise that was all themed around Photon in roughly the window of 1986. Welcome, Doug. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very well. Now, it's great to chat with you about a topic that some people will remember if they were of a certain age and a certain era. Now, you and I first met playing laser tag in California, and when some mutual friends introduced me as Tivia, because nobody ever uses my real name, you immediately said to me, like in Photon. And I said, okay, that's somebody who shares this rather obscure piece of 80s knowledge and trivia with me. And so that's pretty cool. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And the very fact that we have Photon and laser tag as connecting pieces there, I'd love to know a little bit about you, first of all, and how did your laser tag journey begin? And what role did Photon play in getting you to be a laser tag player today?
Oh, I was, I think 8 or 9 when the first Photon Center opened up in New Jersey, and we went with my family to play. And I think I had seen the TV show at that point, and I thought, oh man, I want to be like Christopher Jarvis and just bike over to the center every day. But unfortunately, it's expensive, and I didn't live in biking distance of a Photon Center. So I played it once, and that was it for basically my childhood experience of laser tag until I came out to California. But something was really cool was, do you remember, have you ever heard of a really fancy FAO Schwartz in New York City? I went there as a kid, and they did a full display of all the Photon action figures, like even the ones that were only concepts that never came out.
Really?
Not just like Bodhi, Lee, and Warrior. It had like Leon. I'm pretty sure there was a Leon there, and they just had this amazing display. It looked like the most fun thing ever. I never bought the toys, but that display stays with me.
Very cool. Well, we're going to have a chance to talk about some of the marketing that went along with this. But, clearly you're playing laser tag today, and you had that first experience in a real Photon Center, which is cool. So talk to me a little bit about how and when you discovered the TV show and what made that resonate with you.
I just watched a couple episodes as a kid. I really liked the concept, but it really got me into it. It was the Peter David books, writing as David Peters, and the Michael Hudson book. I don't know if you've read the books, but I read all of those books, and I want to show you. I read all of them probably 4 or 5 times as a kid, or as a teenager even.
Oh, and you've brought one of them with you, and very cool. Yes. So Berkeley Books published the series, including Thieves of Light, which is sort of this standalone compared to the other 6 books that were written. And
right,
so
that's Michael Hudson, but still his pseudonym that was writing as Michael Hudson, whoever it was, and then the other 6 books were Peter David writing under the excellent pseudonym of David Peters. Who could figure that out?
Yes, indeed. So there was a whole series and the lore built around that. And so, and some people think that they followed somewhat similarly. And some people say, well, there were some pretty big distinctions between that and the TV show. But, the TV show kind of went through its own evolution as well. And so I thought maybe we could break this down from the very beginning. So the TV show was a creation of Deke Enterprises, and it was accompanied or followed by the action figure toy line, which was produced by LJN Toys, and then the book series that you're referencing, which was produced by published by Berkeley Books. And just to get us started here, I have a page of the Photon TV show synopsis from Geek Merchandising, which I'd like to read some excerpts just to kind of introduce it to anybody who might not have been familiar with the show. And also because so much changes from paper concept to actual practical creation. So I'd love to just kind of share with you what I see here on paper was the concept, and let's talk about how it actually translated to the small screen. So
Sure.
Photon, the show. And I'm going to read this verbatim. Combine the adventure of the Time Bandits, the zany comedy of A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, state-of-the-art effects and computer graphics, fast-paced music, quick cutting, amazing sets, brilliant costumes, gripping stories, and now you begin to have an idea of what Photon the show is like. Thrust into an intergalactic battle that roars through space to a modern downbeat, our viewers are swept into the world of Photon. Mom runs the show, a computerized bowl of chicken soup with the combined personalities of John Madden and Mae West. Mom monitors the Photon training centers which run throughout the universe and unite all of the peaceful worlds they're in, Earth being a new member on probationary status. The Photon Warriors.
Let's take a moment
Okay.
and just celebrate the guy who wrote that copy or the lady who wrote that copy. The ad writer. A digitized bowl of chicken soup, which is actually really accurate, but that's a great phrase. Let's celebrate that.
Let's do so. And I also like to celebrate Earth being put on probationary status. So
well, that's
from
sort
the
of
get-go, we're not sure where this is
trope.
going with Bodhi Lee, it sounds like.
Well, probation status is common trope in science fiction, but I've never come across the phrase digitized bowl of chicken soup, let alone have it be remotely accurate. So some anonymous guy slogging away in a cubicle produced that in the 1980s, and he deserves to be celebrated, or she.
So the mom character was sort of central to the premise. So tell me your take on Mom.
Well, so again, have you read Michael Hudson's book?
Oh, sure. But for those who
So
aren't familiar, give your take on it.
All right, so there was two. I mean, and there's people who've written articles about this online. I was looking a couple of days ago, and first, all the episodes except maybe one are available on YouTube. There's one called "The Most '80s Show Ever," and it's a marathon. It has like 6 hours of Photon straight. So if you ever, can't sleep, just get really drunk and watch Photon, kids. So Michael Hudson has a really great scene. I haven't read the book in years and decades maybe, but Parzival goes and bugs Bodhi Lee and says, "Hey, what did you see?" Because Parzival is an orphan, never seen his mom, and he thinks that maybe everybody sees their own mother when they see the projection of mom. There's no projection of mom in the TV show, but in the books, there's a projection that actually a hologram they see, and it looks different to everybody. So Parzival asks him, after being very cool and reserved the entire time, the first time he gets urgent and emotional was like, "Did you see your own mom?"
Mm-hmm.
Because if Bodhi Lee did see his mom, then Parzival would know he's seeing his own mother, who he's never seen in his actual life. And I think that's like a really powerful emotional beat. But yeah, the Michael Hudson books were written for young adults, the idea of a teenage crowd, and were more serious. And the Peter David, I think it's open to everybody, but it was targeted at like a younger audience.
Now, you make an interesting point that the TV show didn't have the projection version of Mom. They had a computer screen with a little blip of what you might call a graphic. But I've often thought that maybe the projection concept was based on the Photon briefing. Thoughts on that? There was a
I never
female...
made a connection. I never made a connection, but yes, I think that's absolutely right. And I do think, though, that they may have intended to have a projection and just budget. Like the famous Hollywood slogan, right? Or saying, you can have it faster, better, cheaper, pick two.
Well, and that's also an interesting point about what happened with the TV show, because I believe that it was intended to be animation, but obviously it translated into live action, which may have had some budgetary reasons behind it.
Well, you watch the show and it's clear they are operating on a shoestring budget.
No question. It was shot in Japan. They did some creative things to bring it to what it was. But again, I think there's where you see some distinction between how it paints in your mind when you're reading a book versus what you see on the screen. And again, this is more in reference to the show, but of course they're kind of using the same canon, so to speak, For the
Well, I
books,
like the
the
reference
series all the
to
way
Hitchhiker's
around.
Guide to the Galaxy because in one of the books, Pike orders a drink from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the famous one, the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster.
Okay, and I didn't make that connection.
Oh yeah, it's one of the. I think it's the book I just showed you, High Stakes. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure there's. And I think Pike in the books could shape change, and I don't think there's ever a TV episode where he changes shape. Again, budgetary constrictions.
I think that you're right. That was one of the things, and yeah, and also you just never know where that's a translation in the concept from what was intended versus what actually could translate on screen. But
Have you
yeah,
watched
good
any
for you.
episodes recently? I was watching to get ready for this. I was watching 3 or 4 of the episodes on that marathon YouTube channel I was telling you about, and there's a part where Tibia literally says, "There's no cover here," as they're hiding behind a rock. Because clearly they put the green afterwards and they didn't accurately tell them what they were going to put in. It's just amazing. They're literally squatting behind a rock hiding from lasers. There's cover here.
Well, cover is relative.
No,
And no, I'll admit it's been a hot second since I've seen the TV show.
the show has. I love the characters. I'm not here to crash the show. The show is doing its best with a very limited budget, and it's clear that like Leon can't move around his costume. So all the fighting, I was thinking about this, is really done between Tivia and Mandarr and Bodhi Lee and Mandarr, and almost nobody else really gets to do anything because they're the ones not like wearing costumes that are 100 pounds.
That's right, because they had those big rubber, I assume they were rubber, whatever they were, the full body costumes that certainly would have made things a little bit difficult for moving. But they had these big elaborate concepts about what are these creatures going to look like. And so, yes, there only were a couple that you would call like humanoid in in their status.
And I
Uh,
was like, oh, and like the book's really big up the Structar, but the say like he's a giant robotic being with a mace for one hand and a cannon in the other, and then you see him on the screen and he's shorter than Mandarr.
which may have to do with the fact that I believe they used the same two actors to kind of go between all of the costumes, save for maybe Bathan and Leon. I think all of the bad guys were pretty much the same two people moving around costume.
Well, we should set the plot. So it's the last Starfighter,
Mhm.
where you get a certain score and you become invited to become a Photon Guardian or a Warrior of Light. And Bodhi Lee hits that score and he gets invited and eventually decides to join the Photon Guardians. And the idea is pretty much, serial that every planet can be turned to the darker light with a photon crystal. And they all fight over these crystals, but because we got to make the good guys underdogs, the bad guys are projections and can't be killed, but the good guys, if they ever get shot, that's it.
Well, and another thing that I think they probably had to take into consideration was the age group of who was going to be watching the show versus reading the books versus playing the game. Now, obviously, the game began really geared towards older teenagers, 20 somethings. It was athletic. It was a sport. And the show took things in a little bit of a different direction. I think it opened it up to what became more like the birthday party model for attracting younger kids that we see a lot of in laser tag today. But it started with a very different kind of an audience. But where I'm going with that is I know that Photon was very diligent in their terminology as far as like you wanted to always present that this is a game. And so you are never, quote unquote, there's never a kill or a death. There is a zap or a blast or something like that. So showing that nobody ever really was gone forever was probably a very important thing to drive home, just to make sure that people understood there was no violence involved.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I guess I don't have a problem with the bad guys being projections. I think it's an interesting choice that the good guys are not also projections.
Okay. Why do you
That
think
would
they
have
would have
been,
done that?
I think you kind of always want to weight it against the good guys so that they're at a disadvantage. But I also think if the good guys are projections, I'm just thinking this now actually. If the good guys are projections and the bad guys are projections, then there's no stakes involved, and even kids want some stakes, even if that it requires plot armor.
Okay, and that's a fair point. And with these characters, I mean, you needed the kids to be attached to them in some way and relate to them. Which character did you most relate to?
Oh, so it kind of depends on the medium, right? Like in the books, I really like everybody. Everybody's developed. Like Leon is this grizzled veteran, and Pike is this con man. And Pike, like I've been watching 5 episodes. There are episodes where Pike doesn't say anything at all, and if he does, it's like, oh no. Um, but I rooted for the bad guys, and when I guess kind of segues for self promotion, I was trying to write a song about Photon for to share with you after writing something about laser tag, and I couldn't write anything about good guys. I couldn't even write about the show as a whole. But then the idea of writing about Mandarr, Scourge of the universe, and the words just flowed. So I guess Mandarr was my favorite character
Well,
in the show.
Mandarr resonated with a lot of people, and I want to give a shout out to his larger than life actor David Stay, who brought him to the small screen. And David was just a delight and such a proponent of keeping the Photon lore alive. So I'm sure he would appreciate the fact that you were writing some music and you did lyrics and AI came up with some music to go with. Is that how your creations are forming?
So if you go to suno.com, it's a free account, and you have two options. You can just give a theme, and the AI will make a song totally based on the theme, and like so you can suggest like a music style. Or you can write out all the lyrics, and then you can suggest a music style that to go with it. Like you can request acoustic folk, bubblegum pop. For Mandarr, I asked for rock opera, and then I did a version that was punk rock.
Oh, I want to hear the bubblegum version of the Mandarr song.
No, sorry. I can do that, and I will do that and send it to you. But I did not make a bubblegum yet version of Mandarr. I'm just saying the options you have.
Hmm.
Like, but I did kind of go for bubblegum pop of the version I sent you for "Love Is a Laser," which is, as far as I know, one of the few songs about laser tag.
That's
And
fair.
yeah. And I recently, and I know you blogged about it, and I had one of the staff at Sherman Oaks listen to it, and I was like, maybe you could play this because it's a song about laser tag,
And did
and
they?
it's now on Spotify. Yeah. Well, no,
Awesome.
I just listened to it, but now "Love Is a Laser" is on Spotify, and so is Mandarr, "Scourge of the Universe."
Very cool. So check those out. And you're right, we don't have a whole lot of laser tag songs, let alone Photon specific. And
Though
as
you wrote a
long as
rap, you wrote a rap, and I am
oh,
very
we're
much
not going to
trying to
talk
get
about
you to
my
record
rap.
that. I want you to record that rap so much. I don't want there are like only 15 things I want more in the world than you to record that rap and put it on YouTube.
We'll see. Yes, a laser tag rap was written, and that is all we'll have to say about that.
By you. By you.
By me.
You wrote it. And also
Performed
there was
once ever in life. And the silence, the crickets of that say all you need to know about that one.
but I watched some of your interviews with David, and I think he talked about being the only actor, right? Wasn't he like everybody else was like Chris was a martial artist and everybody else was just wearing a suit?
David Stay was the only one who was by trade a true actor. The others came to it from different realms. And as it was told to me, yes, the actor who played Bathan, that was Graham Ravy. He was in the field of martial arts. He just happened to be right place, right time. Loretta Haywood, who played Tivia, she was a musician at that point, or maybe she was a model at that point first, but she was on her way to becoming a musician. And so acting was just sort of, something that fell into her path. As I understand it, the actor who played Bodie Lee, he was I believe he was there because his family was military and they might have been on a base somewhere there. And I believe that the actor who played Parsival, Eros Rivers, I believe he was just a local kid. So a lot of right place, right time. And then there's not a lot of information about the actors who just happen to embody the suits, so to
Well,
speak, but they were locals.
have you seen Red Dwarf, kind of an adult version of Photon?
No,
Are you familiar with it? It's a British
no.
sitcom. Never heard of it. Okay. It's kind of a parody of Star Trek. I only bring it up. I think people who like the humor of Photon will like Red Dwarf, but similar situation where there's like only one trained actor. There's like three stars. One's a trained actor, the other one's a poet, and the other one's a dancer.
Mhm. Okay. Well, and somehow they make it work.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting parallel. If you get a chance, it's up on there's most of it's on YouTube, if not on Amazon. Try
Okay.
watching. I wouldn't just season one, but if you jump into season three, you can pick up what's going on. It's the last man in the universe kind of thing. That he gets jumped forward in time somehow, and everyone else is dead, and he's the last man, and there's a hologram that keeps him company, and a cat that has evolved into a humanoid.
Okay, I can see some parallels going on there between that and some Photon. And it's really cool to see that, you're writing music, keeping some creativity to keep it in the current purview. And it puts me in mind of a joke. And I didn't write this joke. I think we can credit this to Randy Medding, but I'm not sure. So I'll just say it's a cute Mandarr joke. You want to hear my joke?
Ooh, please share your
That I didn't
Mandarr
write,
joke.
so it's not really mine, but I'll share it anyway. So Bodie Lee and Mandarr walk into a bar. Bodie Lee says, "I'll have a light beer." Mandarr says, "I'll
Have a dark beer.
beer."
Oh, that's it.
That's a joke. See, that landed exactly as well as my laser tag rap. So maybe we'll just leave that one anonymous and move on with kind of some character overviews. Now,
Wait.
talking...
I got an alternate version.
Okay.
Isn't there a champagne called Cristal?
Yeah.
So I think there's also an iced tea. Anyway, so Bodhi orders a Cristal and Mandarr shoots it. And then it turns black.
All right, that'll work.
All right.
We are keeping the light alive. The light still shines.
I say when I hit a
whether
base,
it should or shouldn't at this point.
when I hit a base in infusion zone, in ultra zone in Sherman Oaks, about 2 or 3 times a night, I'll go, "The light shines," and people just look at me. "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "It makes me happy. Shut up."
Well, there's only a few who are, still maybe in the arenas who can really appreciate what you're talking about there. But you get a fellow Photon warrior, they'll be with you. You'll have to buy them a crystal afterwards.
Well, yeah, but we didn't talk about the bad guys. We said Mandarr's name, but so Mandarr is Evan Kiley, who was a friend of Chris, and previously scored 2,500, and then becomes a Photon Guardian. And we know like nothing about his backstory except for one episode, but apparently he dated another Photon Guardian. She actually does get killed, and this causes Mandarr, along with some kidnapping and brainwashing, to become a bad guy, one of the warriors of R. And then there's Bugar, so not Bugar, there's Warrior, good name for a warrior, who has 4 arms and is orange. And they kind of get the most character development. There's actually a different voice for Bugar in 2 different episodes, one with an English accent, one with an accent I couldn't identify. And he is a bug that shoots guns. There's Dogar, a dog that shoots a laser, and Pyrar, who's a space pirate. And Destructar, who is a very disappointing thug. Is that the 6 villains?
I think you got them. And going back to how things sometimes evolve or transition from what you think conceptually on paper to what translates on the screen, I'd love to talk about, I've got some of the original concept sheets for these characters. And what's most interesting to me is how they changed from paper to screen or to the book. And a couple of the things that are really prominent, because let's face it, the bad guys didn't get a whole lot of character development. So the most prominent things you've stated there, but the most evident things that changed from paper to screen are the names. So based on what I can see from a historical reference, it looks like they had maybe intended originally that the Buggar character might be called Armar. So they
Oh,
always tried
that's
to
better.
incorporate. Yeah, you'd almost think something called Armar would fit with the four arms of Warrior, but no, that was what was attributed to the Buggar design. What became Destructar, I see might have started out with the concept name of Killar, and that takes us back to Photon was very diligent about not using that word. Kill would, I'm certain, got scrapped right off the bat by virtue of the fact that we are not going to be presenting anything in any kind of a violent way. So some of these names, I'm sure that some thought went into them. Mandarr just kind of makes sense. He was the only man.
Yeah.
Hyrar might have started out with the genius name RR. R.
I like that
Dog,
better. I want RR.
yeah. Dogar didn't seem to go anywhere. I think he was a dog from the start. And it appears that what became Warrior was originally conceptualized as the warlord, which then, of course, on the TV show became a little hand puppet. So they went in a really
That is
different
so
direction with
disappointing.
that.
Why did they do that? Why a hand puppet? Better to not have the character or just be a light projection. Literally, that's the worst thing in the show.
And it's interesting to see some of David Stay's photos from the show. When you see like the little hand puppet up on a shelf, it's really diminutive and poor thing. Doesn't scare you off as the warlord of R at all.
No, the most powerful being in the existence, and he's a hand puppet. Oh no, why? Why did they do that? Anyway,
I don't know.
so Warrior was going to be the warlord, and then anything else?
Well, as far as the bad guys, that's kind of, as I say, the most unique thing that we can point to. Now, some of the good guys had some transitions in names, but also it's interesting that these characters, mostly the warrior, the Photon Guardians, some of them had some trace back either in name or in character traits. Some of them were inspired by actual Photon players, mostly from, I believe, the Dallas facility. So it's kind of interesting to see how they evolved as well. So, some of the names might have changed a little bit. Like Bodhi Lee came about from what might have been once upon a time Bondi Lee. It looks like Tivia at one point might have been Tiva, and quite frankly, I'm glad that they changed the name. I like Tivia; it has better flow. Lord Bathan was also always patterned after Lord Bathan, so I don't think that there was anywhere to go there. Parsible was a player's actual name. I believe Steve Holt was the player who went by the actual name Parsival, and they incorporated that into the show. Uncle Pike might have once upon a time been Uncle Mike, which makes me wonder if there might have been anybody named Mike who might have been the inspiration there, because I think we're still trying to trace who inspired what. Leon, we believe, was inspired by somebody who played under the name Recon. And the Tivia character, I believe, was inspired by the woman who played as Jet. So it's kind of cool to see how they had incorporated like some real life traits into these characters. And they needed to have something fleshed out by the time it turned into the book series and the TV show and whatnot, because marketing was always going to be, the natural next step to this. And there was a lot of merchandising that was done. You obviously saw firsthand that window when the action figures came out, the LJN created action figure line, and some of the figures made it to production, and some of them we've only seen in advertisements, or maybe you saw. Did you see actual prototypes on display there as well?
It's a memory from when I was young, but I feel that I saw Leon, the action figure.
Well, Leon was one of the rarities that made it to production, just not in nearly the same numbers, it doesn't appear.
Well, this
as
is a big deal. This is FAO Schwartz in New York City. This was not like the local like hobby store. This was
Mhm.
they put on displays that were, expensive, and people came in to see the displays as like a tourist thing in addition to shopping. And of course, things were super expensive there. Like, a $20 stuffed animal would go for $100 because it was New York City FAO Schwartz. So I believe that they had access to things that very few other stores had.
Well, and that might be a place where you could have found some of the really unique merchandising things that might have been a little bit harder to find, or certainly harder to locate and authenticate right now. But as of September of 1986, there was a list of over 25 different licensees for various merchandising of Photon, and it's been corroborated in some print ads and whatnot. But some of the products I have seen firsthand and can account for, yes, they existed. Some of them I have not seen, so I don't know if everything made its way to full production or not. But some of the really cool things that were out there included, like, most people I think have seen probably the thermos and the lunchbox. Did you ever have the lunchbox as a kid?
No, I didn't have anything that was Photon, like I said, but I saw, but I was not. The action figures were terrible, and I wasn't a lunchbox kid.
Okay. So you missed
But
out on the thermos lunchbox, but they had that. K&J Marketeers produced some soft-sided lunchboxes. Largo Toys produced rubber stamp figures. You can find those every now and again on eBay now. Gala Kites producing inflatable fun kites. There were read-along books on tape. There were sunglasses. There was Presto Magic. There were Halloween costumes. There were a whole lot of different things that were manufactured as merchandising opportunities, all themed around the show and the characters. And so I guess we've kind of covered then what you remember best as far as the merchandising would be those figures. And quite frankly, I think that they were super cool. But because I look at this from a historical eye, I look at it and say, boy, the prototypes are the things that really grab my attention.
they
I
were,
may
yeah.
not have thought anything of the produced ones, but the ones that never made it to production, those are the ones that are just so special to me.
They didn't make Tivia. They made a Bodhi Lee that had the wrong hair color and looked nothing like Bodhi Lee. And I guess Warrior was okay, but he was one of the least interesting characters. Like if they made a Mandarr or Tivia, I think those are figures, or a Bodhi Lee that like looked anything like Bodhi Lee. Anyway, so what is your favorite character? Good guy and bad guy?
Oh, boy, it's got to be Tivia.
Well, but okay, so how old were you when you first saw an episode?
Okay, I had to have been roughly, I want to say maybe 6 or 7. So
Okay,
for
so
me,
yeah.
laser tag didn't come into my world until much later, but I saw it on the screen when I was a kid. So something about that, watching that on the screen, resonated with me long enough thereafter that when I became a young adult and was able to, seek out opportunities, I was able to find local laser tag. Now there wasn't Photon near me. There wasn't Photon near me in the beginning, let alone later. But so it kind of was the thing that stuck in the back of my mind and came back to life like 20 years later.
So what about Tivia grabbed you? That she was a martial artist, that she was proficient, that she like gave the main character a hard time, that there wasn't really a romance angle?
Well, at 7 years old, I think as a little girl watching the show, you gravitate to the female character. I think, probably if I had more choices, I might have had more options, but I just glommed onto her because she was representing us girls in this whole battle, and she was hanging in there and doing just as much to be succeeding in every episode as the guys, and she was a badass. She just was.
She was.
She
No,
took
she's
no
legendary.
guff.
Yeah, yeah.
She was the kind of character that, yes, there was an attraction that you could see between the Tivia and the Bodhi character, but when you're talking about kid shows, there's just enough that you could see. Tivia was the kind of girl who was just going to go up and punch that little boy in the arm to show him that she liked him. And that's what played out on screen between Tivia and Bodhi.
And what was your favorite bad guy?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm sure at the time it would have been Mandarr, and if it wasn't then, it sure became later in life for no reason other than the fact that I just adored David's Day. He was a gem, and I feel so blessed that I've had the opportunity to talk with some of the actors in interviews, but David became a friend. David was a really special guy, and he reached out, and he later in his life just embraced the Photon craziness for all the nostalgic value that you could squeeze out of it.
When did you get the idea of interviewing these people and tracking them down?
For me, that came right after the very first Photon, which was held in 2014. And Photon was the 30th birthday celebration of laser tags, specifically celebrating Photon. And it was held in Laurel, Maryland at XP Laser Sport that first year. And then they brought it back. I believe there were 5 in total. But that first year was the 30th anniversary, the 30th birthday for laser tag. And I couldn't miss out on seeing what this was about because having not played Photon, true Photon, when I was young, I thought this might be my last opportunity to do so. They brought out all of the old Photon gear and they had people figuring out how to get this stuff up and running again. And they had a full weekend of play as many Photon games as you want. Come on out and experience the nostalgia and the memories. And at that first event, they had a lovely banquet kind of event where they had speakers, and amongst those speakers were Tamara, blanking on her last name, Tamara, who played the mother on the show.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as well as Mandarr, who is just full of stories. And George Carter himself made an appearance there, and everybody just gave George a standing ovation. It was quite a time for just kind of reliving some of those memories, and like I said, getting to play Photon for the first time, true proper Photon, which for the record I'm really bad at. Everybody thinks I was a vintage Photon player, but I wasn't. But having met David there at that event and spent as much time just chatting with him and hearing his stories. It wasn't long thereafter that I launched my blog. And I thought, this is a guy that I feel like I can just reach out to. We had that kind of connection. And sure enough, I reached out. I said, hey, will you talk to me and be my first true interview on this new blog thing that I'm doing? And he said, in a heartbeat. And from there, that's really what started it all. That's what truly, I don't remember how deep into my blog I was by the time I talked with David, but it wasn't very deep. I would say I probably talked to him late 2014 or early 2015. And from then on, just seemed far more realistic to try and reach out to other people and see, will you share your memories? And everybody from that show was just so wonderful and giving and shared what they could. And I believe really enjoyed reminiscing as well.
I'm assuming your favorite episode was the one where Tivia has to face off against like her younger sister as a challenger to her princessness.
Oh, you know what? I remember that one. And no, I was not wild about that.
Well, it's the most Tivia-centric episode, so that's why I assumed. But
Nope. Here's the
what
one
was
that
your
I
favorite episode?
loved. And
Okay.
it is probably one of the cheesier episodes in the show, I'll be honest. And that might be saying quite a bit right there. But the one that really stuck in my head, there actually 2 episodes if I want to be honest, but the one that for me was Tivia centric was when she hopped on a stage for whatever
Oh yeah,
convoluted
yeah, yeah,
reason they came
yeah.
up with. They were doing like a talent showcase,
They,
and
they were
Tivia was
sneaking
on the
into,
stage
yeah,
doing her rendition of Madonna's Angel.
right. There was like some emperor's banquet, and they had to sneak in, and
Yes.
so she was the entertainment. And I think it's the only time we see her without her mask, or one of the very few times.
That's right. Very rarely did the mask come off. There might have been 2 or 3 times, I think. But yeah, she was singing along and performing, and that one sticks in my mind.
Well, I
The
think that's
other
on your
one that
blog.
stuck in my mind was
Sorry,
Space
didn't
Tower.
they dub her? Didn't they dub her voice in the like the person who we see is not the voice we hear, right?
They dubbed every voice on that show. And they dubbed the music. So even though Loretta Haywood, the actress who played Tivia, is an incredibly talented singer, and I mean she's been all over the place with Bomb the Bass was the big act that she was a front singer with, but she had been on Top of the Pops over in Europe. She had done quite a few things. She was an amazingly talented singer, and she tells me firsthand that they totally dubbed that entire song.
So even David Stay, we don't hear his voice, and we don't hear Christopher Jarvis, Bodie Lee's voice either.
Nope, all of the actual actors had their voices dubbed later, from what I understand. So, it makes less of a difference with the characters that didn't have moving mouths, but I
Right.
imagine it was a bit of a challenge to try and dub those characters after the fact back in those days.
Well, I assumed I didn't know until just now that was the everybody. I thought Tivia, because her mouth is covered, it's pretty easy to dub. But I was wondering if the song, because you said she was a musician, if the song was actually her voice, if that was like the one time we hear her voice, Loretta's voice. I mean,
I asked
so
her
anyway, that
and
was
she
one
said
episode.
no.
Okay, so that's one episode of oh, look, a really fancy bird, an egret, I think. Um, anyway, so the episode she performs, which is a great episode, and what episode is like not necessarily Tivia centric, but your favorite if you remember or you guys remember it.
Space Terror. And gosh, if you put me on the spot to tell you what the actual plot of it was, I would be hard pressed. But I think I'd be hard pressed to tell you the plot of most of them. But I remember
Well,
Space
that's why.
Terror because we're going way back into the 80s and VHS tapes, and for some reason that one episode got recorded on a tape that I kept track of for years thereafter. And it was the only episode that I had recorded. And there was no introduction and there was no end credits. This is like somebody just pressed play like 2 minutes into the episode, started recording. So for years, I had like this concept of there was a show. I used to like it. What was it? Did it really exist? Am I imagining it? No, I'm not imagining it because one episode is on this tape, but I had no idea what it was called. Had no idea how laser tag got into my head until much, much later. Thank you, Internet.
So when did you read the books? When did that come into your life?
Oh gosh, the books. I don't think I discovered the books until I became a collector much later.
Okay, so that's a because like when you have like this picture in your head from these like where the books have time to develop all the characters and you're looking for that character development on the screen and it's not there, it's an interesting lens to see it through because you're like you have all this extra information and you kind of layer it on to something that may not have been intended.
Uh,
Um,
Yes, you're absolutely right, because there is so much that goes into those books. I mean, the books, some of them were very good reads.
well, I'm a big fan of Peter David, and I think Michael Hudson, again, whoever wrote is Michael Hudson, knocked it out of the park. Like he made it
Yeah.
serious. He made it an army against army. Bodhi is getting trained in military tactics. Like there's actually like he's not out in the field from day one. He's like going through 6 months of training, and it's all about like being too confident. And they deal with all these like maturity issues.
Thieves of Light is a book that stands up, no question, still today. And the other books, reading them from an adult perspective now, because I did read them later in life, and it's interesting the things that I connect with and the Easter eggs that I can find in them today that there's no possible way that I could have, even if I did find them as a kid. For example, I love the scene in, I think it was the third or fourth book, I don't remember, but there's a scene where Christopher Jarvis is almost being like brainwashed into thinking that this is a dream, this never really happened, and he basically crashes through security and gets himself into George Carter's office. Now, of course, having had many conversations with George Carter, I look at that and I'm like, somewhere in life, how did it come to be that the people who are on the pages of these books are like in my phone right now?
So that's This Is Your Life, Bodhi Lee, which is one of the books. I think it's the third.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
yeah,
Okay. That sounds right.
um, let's see, because well, five is exile. So wait, five is exile. Six is skin deep.
Yes. And
Anyway,
some of those books, boy, difficult to find on eBay. You come across Skin Deep, grab it.
I will. I will. I definitely will. I might have it actually. Let me see what I have.
I have it as well. I'm just saying, for anybody who's collecting out there, like it's very easy to come across the first couple of them, but boy, the later books are a bit more of a challenge to obtain now. So, for me as a collector, I just love finding the things that are a little bit tougher to acquire.
Well, but it's a parallel because Peter David wrote that book as David Peters. He wrote it, and he wrote She-Hulk, where you like had She-Hulk kind of breaking the fourth wall the way Deadpool does now, but this is before Deadpool. And have you seen the She-Hulk Netflix show?
No, but you know what? That one intrigues me, and I should make some time for it.
Sorry, Disney Plus, not Netflix. The She-Hulk Disney Plus. Anyway, the very last episode. I didn't remember till you just said about him getting into George Carter's office. But in the She-Hulk, which is not written by Peter David but inspired by the Peter David run on the comic book, she climbs out of Disney Plus and goes into Kevin Feige's office, and it turns out Kevin Feige is a robot. Kevin Feige is the guy who supervises all the Disney movies. So that's very much a parallel with like him breaking into George Carter, the father of Photon's office.
Very cool.
So yeah, if you watch the last episode of She-Hulk, if you only watch that last episode, I think you'll see an interesting parallel. And again, he didn't write that episode, but he definitely created that version of She-Hulk who breaks the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-Deadpool.
Well, and I think that there are a lot of things which you can draw parallels to. In fact, like Power Rangers, for example, some of the there are some similar names that were involved between the Photon TV show and the Power Rangers. And I think somebody once said that, maybe they were practicing with Photon to get the chemistry right. But then they came, some of those same players were involved with bringing Power Rangers to the screen and knocked it out of the park then.
Well, and they slow walk. I mean, it's definitely aimed at kids, but I think that the books stand up. Like I said, there's references to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, and they slow walk over like 6 books. Tivia's romance, from a kiss on the cheek to their first kiss to eventually her taking him to prom.
That's right. And that's in the David Peters version of the series. But Thieves of Light, I think Tivia and Bathan are kind of overlooked or oversimplified in that book. You really don't see a whole lot of that particular character arc.
No, but my understanding was that was supposed to be a series, and then he ended up not only writing the one book, and I'm not sure why they got 6 books out of Peter David and only one out of Michael Hudson, but he might have been like, I don't want to be attached to this, because he clearly had reservations about the property.
Mm. Well, it's interesting though to look back and to see like how everybody had their own unique take on what you saw, even when it goes down to the different ways that the characters were drawn or portrayed, how it varied from the screen. To you make the point that the action figure had different hair color. Everybody is kind of aware of that, who's attentive to this. But like as you look at some of the other artwork that came about, there was there were read-along books, there was a coloring book, there was a Presto Magic. So each one of these things had a take on what the characters were looking like. Some of them were similarly themed, but different from, say, the covers of the books, for example.
Well, there's a website I was telling you about, I think Hero Forge, where you can customize your own mini, and I sent you some designs of like Tivia and Mandarr. And like with AI art, you really can reimagine these things, and which gets you thinking. Like, I sent you some AI art this morning about like, and I kind of like, what is the essence of the character? Like, I mean, I don't love the picture on the screen of Warrior with the 2 fake arms that never move. So I tried thinking, it's like his orange skin and 4 arms and 4 lasers, and what else goes into it? In the books, he's mad because Mandarr has usurped his authority as the first first officer, so to speak, of the bad guys. It used to be him, which kind of like plays into he was actually going to be the warlord of R. But in the books, he was the first officer and displaced, and now Mandarr is the leader, so much as anyone gets to be the leader. But like as I was doing those things, I was thinking I did some like Lord Bathan too and Tivia, and tried to like capture like what is their essence, metal cyborg, big mustache, magic, for Lord Bathan.
Well, and I think it's really kind of cool to see how different takes over time have changed. And this seems like a good segue into just mentioning something. And I have to pull this up to make sure that I'm quoting this right. But, did you realize that 40 years after the fact, we actually have some new news to share about Photon? Pico Interactive, I want to give them a shout out. They're a company to kind of keep on your radar. And if you look back in the archives of my blog, there is a hint of something that is forthcoming, a new Photon re-energized comic book that I got an early advanced look at. But keep your eyes on that company, because they are doing things to kind of keep the light shining as well. So I want to give them a shout out, and some things that they might be working on in the future. So it's kind of cool to be able to see the translation of what started all those years back to things that are still resonating today, including your creations and the fact that we're even having this conversation. And I love to wrap things up with some rapid fire tag talk, and it seems like a Photon edition would be very fitting now. So quick questions at you. Are you game?
Yeah. So you've listened to Mandarr Scourge of the Universe, right? Did you like it?
Oh, sure.
Did
Yep. No,
you, and
I enjoyed that. David Stay definitely would have gotten a kick out of that and appreciated it.
Well, I thought you might have taken offense when it was like Tivia will never outfight you, but really the best the best hand-to-hand combat scenes are between Mandarr and Tivia.
I couldn't take offense to that if I tried.
Well, only considering from the bad guy's point of view. And but like, I don't know. There's a part I love playing with like concepts and the idea of writing about Mandarr and as if the Photon Guardians are trying to take away his free will, and it's a song about self-determination. When the person being talked about is in the song being referenced as constantly being machine brainwashed.
Well, and you go back to the series, the Photon Guardians had nothing to do with any of that. So fighting a battle that need not be waged.
So anyway, that was just I just really like the trying to write a punk rock or rock opera version about celebrating free will when the person of the song is the eponymous song character is in fact a cyborg who's being controlled.
There you go.
All right. So that was the sort of philosophical fun I had with the song, in addition to name dropping Tivia and Leon and Pike got more of a shout out than Tivia and Bodhi. So that
That's
was pretty
okay.
cool. For people who love side
Enjoyed it
characters,
nonetheless.
I try to celebrate the characters who don't get the screen time. All right, so let's go with the rapid fire Photon talk.
All right, rapid fire. Who's your favorite Photon character ever?
Told you, Mandarr, and then Tivia after.
Okay, good save there. What was your favorite Photon TV moment? Separate from the books, TV moment.
I think it's with the episode where Mandarr and Bodhi Lee bond for a bit, and he like yells at the bad guys, "Do not shoot him for 30 seconds. After that, you can shoot him."
Much like the
big
truces that are
heroic
made
moment.
in real laser tag.
I have done that. Have you? I have done a minute truce. I've said to somebody, and like I was trying to get the base, and I'm like, I'm on red, they're green, and we're trying to get the blue base, and I'm like, 1 minute truce.
If I had to be honest. Yeah. All right.
I've done that. I've done that. Scored the base, and then I'm like, I give a fair warning. Hey, the minute's up. You might want to move now.
There you go. I'm only a nice guy for a minute.
It's a transactional thing. We are still on different teams, but I also yelled at people. I'm like, don't shoot him. We have a truce for 1 minute. So and that was before I rewatched the episode. So I had this episode where I heard Mandarr like putting my words in his own mouth. Don't shoot him for 30 seconds. All right. So anyway, continue with your
that was a
rapid
good
fire.
TV moment. Favorite Photon moment from the book series?
Oh, it's got to be Bodhi and Tivia's first kiss. He saves her from death, and she kisses him. Who doesn't love that kind of romance?
And I remember that scene so specifically, I can even quote it without having the book in front of me. And she says, "You weren't going to let me go, were you?" Or maybe I can't quote it verbatim, but you weren't going to let me go, or you were never going to let go. And he's like, "Of course."
Well, but also like, you would have been sucked into space rather than let go. And he's like, of course. And then she kisses him.
Well, who could not kiss him after that?
That skewed my view of romance as I understood that I had to risk death in order to get kissed. That was my view of romance as a teenager.
Well, and some girl is lucky you learned your lesson from those books.
It's very hard to find people who are on the risk of death. And I found mostly you find that in women who are being abused, and they don't appreciate the intervention most of the time.
Well,
in my
let's
experience,
look at it more like a metaphor. No real death in Photon. It was a metaphor.
It turns out in writing songs, I've discovered I've got a lot of trouble with metaphor. Everything I say is literal. which is a weird thing to do in songs. But and also life. But there you are. I have difficulty with metaphor. Or as they said in Home Movies, a cartoon, I'm done with subtext. I
All right.
don't know if you've seen Home Movies. Home Movies is a great cartoon. Watch Home Movies.
Okay. What
Okay.
was your favorite
Sorry, I
piece of
digress.
Photon nostalgia? Whether you owned it or not, what was just your favorite piece?
Oh, it's got to be the books. Sorry, I didn't own any merchandise. I didn't want any merchandise. The action figure is terrible. Though I would trade serious cash to get my hands on a Leon action figure with the space bazooka.
Because I look over at my shelf. Let's talk.
You have it? Show it. Show it to the world. You have a Leon action
Oh gosh,
figure?
I'm gonna knock stuff over if I pull if stuff starts crashing down. Oh,
It's boxed. Oh, it's boxed. Oh, it's beautiful. How much you want for it?
oh, he's too special. He inspired my baby. My first leopard gecko was named Leon. That's why I have that.
Oh. $500.
Oh,
$500 cash in the barrel right now.
not this day, but I'll bear you in mind.
All
As
right,
we wrap
someday.
things up, though, with one last one, what is your favorite Photon catchphrase?
Oh, let the darkness grow.
Very fitting way to end things there. I want to say thank you to you for your time. That is my guest, Photon aficionado and the laser tag lawyer, Doug X. Thank you so much, Doug, for joining me and taking this little trip down Photon memory lane.
You're welcome. Let the darkness grow.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Laser Unfocused Tag Talk. Listen for more episodes on the first and third Friday of each month. Want to be a guest on an upcoming episode? Find out more and follow my blog and website at TibiaChickLovesLaserTag.com.